is Bloomberg.
Nutrigenomics and precision nutrition is one of those rare scientific fields that overlaps with the Instagram-friendly wellness industry.
There is a lot of interest in this idea of personalized nutrition, and especially how accessible it is to the public. You can go on Google and type personalized nutrition or diet and genes, and you will find dozens of different companies that offer this nutrition precision tests.
One of those companies is Routine. Routine claims that their personalized tests stemming from sciences like nutrigenomics make their supplements different. But even with the claims from Routine, as well as dozens of other personalized nutrition companies, the science still has a long way to go.
A lot's happening on Wall Street.
I think Jay Powell said things that were indefensible.
Need to catch up?
This is Bloomberg Wall Street Week. I'm David Weston.
We've got the information and insights.
We think that's the next secular shift.
From businesses most influential and instrumental.
It's knocking it out of the ballpark.
It's a challenging dynamic.
This is a level of uncertainty that we haven't had to deal with.
Bloomberg Wall Street Week, live Friday with replays all weekend on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance Early Edition. I'm Kaylee Lyons with Kriti Gupta in New York and Anna Edwards in London. Matt Miller is off today. Well, U.S. tech stocks are down this morning and taking the broader market down with them after disappointing earnings from some big names. Microsoft posted its weakest quarterly revenue growth in 5 years, while Alphabet's revenue fell short of expectations. Each of those stocks down around 6% in pre-market trading, while Meta and Twitter are on deck to report today. Joining us now for more is Matt Bloxham of Bloomberg Intelligence. So, Matt, let's just start with Alphabet. If Google can't hang in there, what does that mean for everybody else in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a kind of fairly significant warning about, the direction of travel for advertising budgets across big corporates. I think we've seen some similar surveys recently too, pointing to slower spend next year. There are definitely some nuances there, and also got some of the advertising agencies reporting today too, WPP. And I think the likes of Google are definitely suffering from the downturn in, for example, crypto advertising spend. But I think definitely across the board pressure on ad budgets.
So that's the Alphabet story, and you're sort of broadening it to the ad story more widely. And I know that we've seen that in different advertising agencies around the world. So that was Alphabet. What about Microsoft? We also heard from them overnight.
Yeah, Microsoft, actually, their numbers for the quarter were pretty strong, slightly better than expectations. It was more of what they said about the forward guidance, which was the problem. So Azure, which is their cloud computing business, they were talking about a 5 percentage point slowdown sequentially in growth. Still very strong growth, probably kind of mid 30% year-on-year growth. But I think some sense there that the investment in technology upgrades is starting to slow, and some of that revenue is usage-based, and that as corporates see lower activity from their customers, that will translate into lower spending with Microsoft on cloud. So still good growth, but just not as good as people were hoping for.
Okay, so still a focus on cloud. And what do we know about the strength of the dollar and how that's impacting these businesses then, Matt? Because this was something we talked about last earnings season, and it hasn't got much better.
No, in fact, it's got a bit worse. So I think it was about 5 percentage points of growth headwind for both Microsoft and Google this quarter, and it was about 3 percentage points last quarter. So I think obviously until we lap those pressures next year, it's going to be a problem, unless of course the US dollar strength reverses, which seems unlikely for now. So yeah, it's definitely a problem for those US listed companies.
Well, Matt, what is the next leg of growth then? And when we're talking about cloud, which has really become this fast and furious transition, not just for Microsoft, but for Alphabet as well in their cloud business, and I dare to say even Amazon Web Services, if you start to see this pullback in business investment, what's the next leg of growth for a lot of these big tech companies?
Well, it's a good question, and I think that the next leg of growth is essentially competing more directly with each other. Also, we've seen Apple push more aggressively into advertising. Amazon's doing the same thing. So I think it's more each other looking at their respective dominant businesses and trying to push for a share of that pie.
How much can be blamed on Apple, Matt?
It's definitely a significant factor. I think it's been more of a factor for Facebook and Meta, and obviously they report later today. They've borne the brunt of those changes to ad tracking. A little bit of an impact there for Google, but I think, certainly for Google overnight, it's more about the kind of broader economic slowdown and perhaps some of the structural pressures we're seeing from TikTok coming in as a quick grower in the digital ad space.
And Matt, finally, in the ad space, Twitter would have some sensitivity there as well, but that doesn't really seem to matter right now. All that matters is whether or not Elon Musk does indeed close the deal on Friday, as he says he will. Given the kind of environment we're talking about, assuming he succeeds in taking the company private, what do you think happens next? How does that business need to be altered and run in an environment competitively and economically like this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think obviously we've already heard some hints that he's maybe thinking about some significant headcount cuts, so kind of trimming the cost base substantially. He's obviously historically also talked about some kind of subscription model for that business too. So I think, particularly in light of a weaker ad environment, I think there's always been issues about whether Twitter's really properly monetizing its franchise in the ad space. I think a subscription model may well be something that we see under Elon Musk.
Okay, Matt, thanks very much. Matt Bloxham of Bloomberg Intelligence, thanks for bringing us up to date with all the themes from tech. And coming up later today, an interview with the DoorDash CEO. That is going to be right here at 5 p.m. in New York, 5 p.m. New York time, 10 p.m. in London. This is Bloomberg.
Material samples brought back from objects in space can shed light on billions of years of our solar system's history, including details about the origin of life here on Earth.
A piece of an asteroid is a piece of the earliest beginnings of the solar system.
But picking up rocks from the surface of an asteroid or planetary satellite isn't as easy as it sounds. It requires voyages of millions of miles to bodies that have never been seen up close. Probes need to land on surfaces with weak gravitational pulls, where the surface terrain is completely unknown, gather samples, and then make the long trip back. And while behemoths like NASA and SpaceX grab headlines, it's a relatively young space agency. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, better known as JAXA, that is taking the giant leap necessary to bring the mysteries of space back down to Earth.
The markets are preparing to close, but the day is not over yet.
Stock that is now up about 45%.
A lot of volatility right now.
You need the power of the Bloomberg terminal to get you market-moving data before anyone else.
These numbers are much higher than expected.
Upgraded today to overweight.
You need top analysts to bring you exclusive global insight into cross-asset markets.
The muni bond market.
China is a really big focus.
Bitcoin ain't playing along today.
It's going to be short term.
Bloomberg Markets, The Close, weekdays on Bloomberg.
This is a market that over the past few weeks has made it clear it wants to go higher. It got a little spooked by the idea that geopolitical tensions are rising.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance Early Edition. I'm Anna Edwards in London with Kaylee Lyons and Chrissy Gupta in New York. Matt Miller is off today. Now, Treasuries are extending gains from yesterday's close alongside the US dollar declining to its lowest level in 3 weeks. Our markets reporter Valerie Teitel takes us through the dollar's recent descent and what it all means. Valerie, good morning. Is this just some position clearing out, or do we get excited that we might once again be talking about the pivot word, P?
Yeah, and I think traders were really caught off guard by the dollar's move weaker today. There was really a lack of a clear catalyst. I've got a chart here of the last 4 days of the dollar's descent. Friday, we had the BOJ intervention in the Wall Street Journal article clamoring that the Fed might step down to 50 in December. And then 2 days ago, then yesterday, we had the weak U.S. house price data. So the fall to overnight today basically mirrors the move we've had, and there was no clear catalyst, which shows that maybe this was a positioning clear out. Maybe this pivot narrative is gaining steam. And I'm going to show you one more chart, which maybe is something we should be a bit concerned about. It is the correlation of the Bloomberg Government Bond Index to the S&P. And my thesis here is that government bonds are beginning to trade like risk assets. And as this pivot narrative either picks up or falls away, whichever way we're headed, government bonds and equities tend to move in the same direction. Risk tends to rally at the same time bond prices increase. Now the one thing that is shocking about all of this is when this correlation breaks down, that is the scary scenario. What if we have a situation where the Fed pivot comes, but then the inflation fight it hadn't finished its inflation fight first, meaning we have a big equity risk bounce at the same time bonds fall because inflation is entrenched. So yes, we look at this and say the recent correlation is shocking, it's high, we've never seen anything like this, but to me it's the real risk is when this new correlation breaks down.
Yeah, it's a question of really if a Fed pivot is going to be bullish if it's happening because something is breaking. Bloomberg's Valerie Teitel, thank you so much as always. And of course, you can see both of her great charts at GTV Go on the Bloomberg terminal. Finally, let's take a quick look at what else is ahead today. Tech earnings will continue with Twitter and Meta reporting sentiment not great going into those prints after the disappointing results from Microsoft and Alphabet yesterday. Then it's UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's first Prime Minister's Questions. That's at 7 a.m. New York time. U.S. President Joe Biden will be holding a bilateral meeting with the Israeli President Isaac Herzog later today. And on the economic front, we'll get U.S. new home sales at 10 a.m. Eastern. That will be interesting after the housing data yesterday. That really was a catalyst for the bid we saw into the Treasury market. And finally, and most importantly, it is Anna's birthday today. So Anna, a very happy birthday to you from the entire Early Edition team.
Thank you. Well, I obviously know how to spend my time, don't I? What I got for my birthday is a stronger pound and some bank earnings to talk about, which is, of course, a thrill. Chrissy, interesting for markets to watch, though, what's going on in the UK politics space. I'm moving on. The UK medium-term fiscal plan, it seems, is going to, according to the BBC, now we've got another report